that, yeah, in principle, yes, the state is supposed to be an institution of justice that is supposed to bring about justice, and so therefore they wield the sword in order to protect the innocent against the evildoer. In reality, the state is born in conquest, it's an act of conquest, and that is what the state really is about. Maybe in pie in the sky fantasy land you can talk, and you didn't say that exactly, but you can talk about the state as an institution of justice. And this is, all secular power and dignities are not merely alien from, but hostile to God. Secular governments owe their existence to the sword. All institutions of the Roman government, even its charities, are based upon brute force. This is contrary to the way of Christians, among whom everything is voluntary. So, okay, yeah, St. Paul himself said that the state has the right to wield the sword. But it also says, in the New Covenant says, that your sword shall be beat into plowshares. And the history of the state using the sword is usually, most of the time, not for the establishment of justice, but for the act of conquest. So now you got, well, his view kind of got submerged when the Roman Empire adopted Christianity as the official religion, state religion. It became a state religion. And now you can't have these kind of views. So his views got kind of submerged a little bit. But there were groups that held them throughout Christian history. And particularly in the Middle Ages, after the western half of the Roman Empire, eastern half continued. But the western half of the Roman Empire collapsed. And the Christian monastic movements rebuilt Europe from the ground up. The barbarians came down and invaded, and the civilization went back to a Stone Age level of existence. And then the Christian monastic leaders started to rebuild society from the ground up. So without Caesar, without these authorities, that they could gain power from, so these questions of authority started to pop up again. And to make a long story short, by the time you get to the American settlers coming over here, the Puritans generally, as a whole, took St. Paul's notion of the right to wield the sword is still valid for today. The Quakers saw it as a temporary expediency and that it was no longer valuable. So you had this argument within the early settlers among limited government with the right to wield the sword as an institution, as an establishment of justice, versus no government. Government is not legitimate because it's based upon force, and force is not a legitimate way of dealing with human beings. And again, I want to make this distinction between charity and justice because he's talking about, and this is Tertullian again, all institutions of the Roman government, even its charities, are based upon brute use of force. The Roman government used to have grain distribution, particularly under Caesar when he was trying to win the support of the people from becoming from a republic to an empire. And he wanted the people to, so in order to get the people to give up their sovereignty and as a republic, he had to win them over. So he gave the charities of the Roman government was, contrary to those of the Christians, was based upon trying to gain the allegiance of the people on the part of Caesar. And so you had these grain handouts. You had in the Colosseum, you had the Roman games, the gladiator games. Get them all addicted to blood and violence. Get them entertained. Get their attention. They didn't have TV back then, but get their attention away from the responsibilities of citizenship. Get them dependent upon the sovereign, and so that they cannot exercise their own self-government. And then you can rule over them. And so Tertullian recognized this. This was way back in the 2nd century. He's a 2nd century writer. He's saying, look, even their charities are illegitimate. And they were illegitimate because it had nothing to do with helping the people, and it had nothing to do with compassion. It was enslaving the people in the dependence upon the sovereign. And it was part of the strategy of bringing Rome from a republic to an emperor. And the Romans had saw the example of the Egyptians, where the pharaoh or was God. And the Roman emperor wanted to be worshipped as a god. So he had to get the support of the people. And one of the ways they did that is this charity system. And so Tertullian is pointing out, look, even their charity is not geared towards compassion. It is geared towards oppression. So this was something that the Quakers were very strongly uncompromising on. That government, for any purpose whatsoever, is illegitimate because it's based upon the justified use of force. And actually, Tolstoy, who was Leo Tolstoy, who wrote the famous Russian writer, he wrote this book called The Kingdom of God is Within You. And in this book, in the beginning of it, he admits that his inspiration, a lot of his inspiration came from the American Quakers and their arguments. He's written in his book. So Tolstoy, this Russian author, he's making the same argument, that the human society should be based upon, brotherly love, and that there should not be a need for the institutions of either the state or the church. And so, and I'm not suggesting that we should go that far, but this argument, this dichotomy, is over the proper role of the state and over the proper relationship between human beings in a free society is what gave birth to the American experiment in ordered liberty. And we forget that at our peril. Now, it is time that we back up a little bit and rediscover some of these arguments and engage in them because they are relevant today as they were then. Actually more so because they've been forgotten. And we have a state that is growing and growing and growing and using any excuse it can to expand. And there's only one, the expansion of state authority undermines the exercise of citizenship. And if we want to continue as a free people, these are concerns and issues and arguments that we need to rediscover.